This is The Courage to Be Courageous, a podcast hosted by Dan Bolen. I'd like to welcome all my viewers from all over the world to listen to this podcast. I appreciate it. We had a great guest today, and I'm excited to interview him. Actually, I've met him, and I've met him and his fiance too, at a pool party. My partner just reminded me of that. But he's got a great story, and I think you're going to really find it powerful. I think you'll find it intriguing, and I know you'll find it encouraging as well. It's an example of an individual using courage to come out to be his authentic self, and we're really excited to have him on our program. So Cameron Call is his name. Welcome, Cameron. We're excited to have you on our program.
Hi, Dan. Thanks for having me.
Well, it's been my pleasure as well. So we want to know a little bit about Cameron's educational background. And he ended up not where he expected to go, but he ended up there as well. So Cameron, give us a little history of your background educationally.
Yeah, so I went and got my bachelor's degree at Brigham Young University in Provo, Utah, in exercise science. When I first started college, I thought I wanted to be a dentist, and I ended up having a bit of a change of heart and started working for a chiropractor in college and decided to go to chiropractic school. So I got my doctorate chiropractic degree after undergrad and went to Texas and got that in Parker University in Dallas.
Excellent. And I believe you got that in 2015.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yep.
Yeah. So we have someone, if you got aches and crinks in yourself, then we got a chiropractor that can do that.
Come and see us. Access Spinal Sport in Tempe.
How about that? That's cool. Well, Cameron, tell us a little bit about your early history and how you know that you were different. And of course, you were raised in the LDS church, which can be very restrictive. So tell us a little bit about your history there.
Yeah, so I am from Arizona. I was born in Mesa, Arizona, and then I lived out in Queen Creek for a long time. Spent some time up in Utah as a kid too. But yeah, so I'm a native here to Arizona, and knew kind of from a young age that I wasn't like the other boys. I wasn't like my other cousins and friends, and I just kind of felt a little different. And being raised in the Mormon church, you're not really encouraged to be very different. And so I spent a lot of my time as a kid just kind of ignoring certain thoughts and feelings and just kind of did what I thought I was supposed to do. And went about my day.
Mm-hmm.
But
and you
yeah,
so almost go ahead, Cameron. I'm sorry.
Just was saying all my family's here, and Arizona's home. So
yes, okay, I got that. But you were a dedicated Mormon boy. I mean, you went on a mission, I believe, in Nashville, Tennessee. Tell us a little bit about that.
Yes, yeah. So I was raised in the LDS church, and was pretty hardcore, a big believer, and spent all my time and energy following all the rules and the suggestions. I did serve a mission to Nashville for 2 years. I was a proselyting missionary, and that was a pretty incredible experience. It was the same mission that my father went to back in the 70s.
Oh, wow.
And yeah, so he was there during 77 to 79, during a lot of political stuff happening with with all the rights and stuff like that. So he had some experiences there, but so it was neat. It was really neat to go where he was at. And I remember when I was about to leave on a mission, I was pretty nervous to spend 2 years living with men.
Mm-hmm.
But I was taught and told that, hey, if I follow the rules, if I work hard enough and focus on Christ, that He will change me. And so I was determined to to focus on the work. And I had an amazing mission. And it was an incredible experience. Met lots of cool people. It was really hard. Probably the hardest thing at the time in my life. But I remember as I was there, I did not have any major distractions with my companions, whether I found them attractive or handsome. I was able to focus the entire time. And I remember when I came home, I felt like I was a new man, and I felt like it had worked. And so my mission, I thought at the time it had changed me. And so it was that much more motivating to continue down the road I was on, following the principles and doctrines of the Mormon Church. So I kept going after that. And shortly after I got home, I went to BYU. And I met a woman during my first summer of my first semester of school. We met as camp counselors, actually, at a church camp. Yeah, it was called Especially for Youth. And we were actually in Flagstaff at the time, and met her, and I caught her attention. She caught mine, and we started to date there, and we're engaged and married within 6 months.
Wow.
Yeah.
Now, when you were on the mission, did you know at that time you were gay, or did you think it was different? Or because you said you thought that when you in your mission, you came back that you had been cured. What were you cured from?
Yeah. So all my childhood, I never used the word gay. I knew I had attractions to men. And so in Mormonism, they like to call it same-sex attraction.
Right.
And so the phrase that people like me were taught to use was, I struggle with same-sex attraction. That's my temptation. That's my weakness. Just like someone has a weakness for, I like sugar or cookies, or I don't know. So, and during high school, I discovered some gay pornography and looked at it occasionally, but never called it gay. I never called myself gay. And so every time I would have like a moment of weakness, I guess, in my mind, I would just tell myself, hey, you got to work harder. You can beat this. The other thing that Mormonism taught was that masturbating leads to homosexuality. And so
really? I did not know. That's new for me.
Yeah.
I did not know that.
Yep, I remember going to lots of church meetings with my dad and just hearing that from the pulpit about how bad masturbation is, but not just for the main reasons people say it's bad, but additionally, it leads to homosexuality. So I grew up afraid to ever touch myself, especially when I was afraid that I might be gay, even though I never used that word. And so I would look at pornography sometimes, but I would never masturbate. I didn't masturbate a single time throughout my entire adolescence. And people find that hard to believe, but no, I had plenty of wet dreams during the night.
Yes, you're going to have those if you're not masturbating, and even if you are, you'll have them. Yeah.
Right. So, but yeah, I grew up just kind of afraid of myself, and so instead of acknowledging who I am and what's inside, I just pushed it down, ignored it, and tried to cover it up with service in the church. I played piano my whole life. I was on student council. I was super active in all these extracurriculars. I was the seminary class president for our school. I was very involved. I was the assistant to the bishop in my congregation at church. And so I had a lot of one-on-one time with my bishop. And so a lot of valuable experiences. But what no one knew is that I was so motivated to do all of this because I was hoping all of my work was going to make this what I viewed as a weakness at the time.
Do you think it was going to change the gay?
I had hoped.
And I have to believe, Cameron, that shame was involved there.
So much shame. Yeah.
Tell us
much
about
shame.
that. Tell us about the shame you had.
Yeah. I would get worried that if people noticed me staring at people at the pool, or when we'd be at the store in the underwear aisle, if I would be caught in the underwear aisle, or watching a movie and there was a sexy actor with his shirt off, or during a sex scene, like, oh, don't watch this. And but yeah, I grew up kind of hating myself,
Yes.
and wanting it to be different, and hoping it would. And so I found myself doing things to kind of counteract that. I chased lots of girls. I tried to be very popular. I think I was in some ways, but yeah, all the moms loved me because I played the piano. I was very clean. I was respectful, and I never kissed their daughters when I take them on dates. So,
Wow. And I'll have to make a comment about your piano playing, because I've heard Cameron play. He is amazing. Amazing pianist. Oh, were you self-taught? Did you take any lessons, or were
no,
you self-taught?
yeah. So I took lessons. I started when I was 7 years old from
Okay.
my grandma.
Your
Taught me.
grandmother. Uh-huh.
Yeah. My
Wow.
my so and then
Do you think
I
playing the piano in a way was kind of a release for you?
it was. It took me a while to realize it was something I used as a coping mechanism.
Right.
But I would play for hours, and I never played video games. I never watched tons of TV. I would play the piano. And when my mom would have to ground me for some reason, which was really rare, they would ground me from the piano. And I remember when I was in the Cub Scouts, and we would be working towards merit badges. My reward for earning different merit badges and advancements in the Boy Scouts was new piano music. That was all I wanted, was new and different pieces to play. And yeah,
Wow.
so
That's amazing. That's outstanding. So tell us about your marriage, and you've gotten 3 beautiful children. Tell me
yeah.
how that all happened.
Yeah, great question. Yeah, so as I said a few minutes ago, I met my ex-wife. We were camp counselors,
I think
and
you said she was 6 foot and beautiful and blonde.
yep. So she's close. She's 6 foot, but she had long dark hair.
Oh, dark hair. Oh, I thought it was
Yeah.
blonde hair. Okay.
So
Yeah.
she saw me. I walked in late to our orientation meeting for all the counselors, and so I made an entrance. Talk about a stereotypical gay wanting to make an entrance.
Yes.
So I walk in, and I totally caught her attention. And during our first break, she chased me down, and we were learning a dance, and all the counselors had to do a dance in front of all the kids. And so she immediately asked me to be her partner. And I had never been approached by a girl like her before. And so it was pretty fun. And yeah, so we hung out a lot during those couple weeks, and then we started to date. We got engaged, and it was all really fast. And in my mind, after a mission, the next piece of the ladder, the next step is marriage, and that's what we were taught. That's what we're told. And so we went out, and I thought, you know what, like, I think this is it. I remember the first time her and I kissed. I had an erection, and I was like, wow, it works. And so again, I thought, dang, my mission, all this obedience, the fact that I found this girl without any effort, my prayers have been answered. And I have an erection, so clearly it's working. I'm not what I thought I was. And I had so much relief, and I was so grateful. I'm like, oh, this girl is my
soulmate, probably at the time.
yeah. And I love her. I still do, but so we got engaged. We got married really quickly. which is pretty standard in the church because they don't have sexual relationships before they're married.
Right.
They're supposed to. And and so
And you were actually married in the temple, correct?
we were. Yep.
Yeah.
Yep. We got married in the Mesa Temple.
Mm-hmm.
And at the time, it all just felt like life was working out exactly how it was supposed to. I was excelling in the church with different church callings. We were at BYU, the big church school. We were living the Mormon dream, and her and I, we looked really good together. And it's funny. I remember our first official date. I forgot it was the same night as my younger brother's Eagle Scout Court of Honor. And I'm an Eagle Scout, and I had to go participate in this event. It's a big milestone in Scouts. And so I told her, I said, hey, we can either postpone our date or we can reschedule it, or you can just come with me. It'll only be an hour, and then we can go on our date afterwards. I was like, but my entire extended family is going to be there. Like, I come from a family that is very supportive of everybody. Like, we'd go to everything. And so she comes on our first date to meet my entire extended family. And I remember walking in with her, and I'm telling you, she was a 6 foot, long haired, like, she's a knockout. So pretty. And several of my aunts just like, their jaws hit the floor when they saw us walking in. They're like, "Oh, they've got the look." And I remember a small part of me hearing this when they pulled me aside and just thinking, you know what? Even if I have those thoughts that I used to, because I don't anymore. That's what I convinced myself. Even if I had those thoughts, no one would ever suspect it because of her. There is no way a woman like her would be with someone like me. And so I felt so safe in a very selfish way that this woman was a good mask for me. And so even from that very first date, I just felt like, okay, I'm safe with her. And we dated, we got engaged and married, and interestingly enough, like shortly after our marriage, things started to kind of creep in. I remember our first semester as newlyweds. We lived in a tiny studio apartment, and she would say things at times like, I always pictured as a newlywed that we would have a lot more sex. That we would like skip class and come home and bang it out, or we'd skip church and have sex and do all these things, and we never did that.
Interesting. She picked up on that.
Yeah, from the very beginning, I could go weeks without wanting to have sex again, and in my head, I just was telling myself, no, Cameron, you're just like stressed. You're trying to figure out your major. At the time, I hadn't declared my major. I didn't know what I was going to do for a career. And I just was telling myself, you're just stressed. You're a newlywed. You're a husband. You have to provide for your family now. You got to figure out what to do. That's a lot of weight. But I didn't let myself acknowledge, maybe there's something more going on here.
So in a way, Cameron, you were hiding from yourself.
I was.
You were hiding from who you were. And so you were using all different ways to keep you from thinking about who you really were. I know what that hiding about is about. I went through it my entire life, hiding out. And you'll come up with reasons. And I think for me, it was my reason at the real core of it was my shame of who I was. And when you do shame, you'll figure out any type of diversion you can so you don't have to feel the shame and work through it.
Yeah.
I get what you're saying. Well, tell us about your children. You have 3 beautiful children. Tell me when it started to deteriorate, or not deteriorate. That's not a proper word. When did it start to change? I guess it would be true that your marriage started to deteriorate. But tell me how that actually happened, because you were playing a pretty good show there for a while.
I was, and I Yeah. So she worked really hard to finish school really early so that she really wanted to be a stay-at-home mom.
Hmm.
And so we tried to get pregnant pretty quickly after we got married. sh- we wanted to have kids, and
Hmm.
so we started to go down that path. And month after month, never got pregnant.
Hmm.
And here she was barely 20 years old. I was 22. Um, After 2 years of trying, we went and had some testing done, and it turned out I had some male factor infertility
Hmm.
going on, and I was unable to get her pregnant. At the same time that this had happened, I got this diagnosis. My father was diagnosed with stage 4 malignant melanoma,
Oh
and
my.
the skin cancer had spread to his lymphatic system. It was really bad. He had to lose his ear, and just
Oh my word.
his life was totally crumbling at the time. And at the same time, I get diagnosed with this infertility, and I remember feeling after you get married in the temple, the next step is to have kids. That's the next road in Mormonism. And I can remember feeling like I had tried so hard my entire life to do everything right, to go on a mission, to get married, to find a woman and do all these things. I kept all the rules. Um, I couldn't get her pregnant. And I felt so defeated as a man. And I remember at that point, and just at the same time with my dad's health, I felt so much shame, like I had failed. I felt like a failure. I coped with that stress, and I looked at some gay pornography for the first time since I was a junior in high school. And um, it had been about 7 years before from the last time I had looked at it or so. And I, at that point, just kind of all of those feelings I had in high school returned pretty quickly. And I just thought, like, oh no, like I still struggle with same-sex attraction. That was the phrase in my head of this is still not fixed. Um, but at the same time, I had convinced myself, but that just means, Cameron, you're not doing enough. You're not good enough. You're not righteous enough. Get your butt in gear, read more scriptures, say more prayers, go to the temple more, have more sex with your wife. It'll be fine. And so that's kind of when things started to slowly go a bit downhill for me, and when the marriage definitely started getting harder. We ended up having or going through in vitro fertilization together, and so we go through all this fertility testing, and we go to the doctor, and they tell me, "Hey, you have to go in this room and masturbate in
Hmm.
this cup."
Yes.
And all of my memories of my adolescence of being told, "Hey, if you masturbate, you're going to be gay." I had a huge meltdown, like anxiety attack. I go in the collection room of the fertility clinic in Utah, and it took me an hour and a half to jerk off in this cup. My ex-wife came in to try to help me. It didn't help. I couldn't do it. I rubbed my dick raw because it was so hard. It was
Oh
so
my
not hard,
God.
but it was that was probably one of the most traumatic
Oh.
experiences at the time in my whole life.
Oh my
Uh,
gosh.
Masturbating for the first time, and just all the shame of like, oh, and I have to get my wife pregnant by masturbating. Like that's not how it's supposed to be.
Yeah.
um, but IVF worked. Our first cycle, we had our boys, and we were blessed with those two. And then we froze one embryo that was good enough quality. And a couple of years after that, we thawed her out, and she became our daughter. And so our first round worked, and we're like, hey, this is great. We've got some boys. We have a daughter. I'm good.
You know,
and
Cameron, when you went through that, I just feel so heartfelt for what you were going through because as a kid, you wouldn't masturbate thinking you're making it gay. So you're doing something and you're having internal homophobia about yourself. If I do this, I'm gay, and yet I want to get my wife pregnant, and this is not the normal way we do it. That had to be tremendously difficult for you.
It was a lot of different emotions that were conflicting, and like I love her, so I have to do this, but I
Yeah.
hope it make me like there was so much fear. Um, and I had to do it a couple of times. Like we had to go multiple times because they had to get different samples to test
Hmm.
and have backup in stock. And she knew I had a hard time in the collection room. She didn't know exactly why.
Hmm.
She just knew my thoughts on masturbation and how wrong I thought masturbating was. And um, she was so supportive. At one point, she hired a friend of hers to do a photo shoot of her in lingerie, and she made me this photography book of like a boudoir photography book with these beautiful images, and she gave it to me as a Christmas gift, to help me in these collection rooms as we were going through all these treatments. And even now, like, it was one of the most thoughtful gifts I have ever received. And the embarrassment and shame because of the fact that it was not helpful, like, that's a lot.
Yes.
But I am grateful that she was trying to help, and
Yes.
and that just shows the type of person that she is. Um, but yeah, so it was an experience.
So you have three beautiful kids. You have two twins. The two
Hmm.
twins are boys. What's their names?
Nash and Granger.
Nass
Yep.
and Granger. And then your daughter 2 years later, and her
Yep.
name is.
So we named Nash after Nashville, where I served my mission, and then we named Granger after my favorite Harry Potter character, Hermione Granger, and then
Oh,
my daughter. So at the time, we were told that 10% of couples have infertility, or they go through infertility stuff, and then when we did all the IVF procedures, my ex-wife had 30 eggs that were produced in the process, and three of them became our kids. So we're like, hey, 10% infertility, 10% of your eggs. She was watching The Bachelor one time, and there was a girl on there named Tenley. And so I said, hey, let's name our daughter Tenley after the number 10, to remind us of just all those numbers we've seen in our life. So
wow.
Nash, Granger, and Tenley.
Oh, that's fantastic. Beautiful
Yeah.
kids, too. I've seen them on Facebook where you are playing the piano with them,
Yeah.
and
Um,
beautiful children. So tell us a little more how the marriage ended and how you got there and where it is today with your
Yeah.
wife. Your wife is Christian, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, okay.
Kristen. Yep. Um, yeah. And so after we had our kids, things things were things were stable, but definitely got hard. All of our arguments were all around sexual intimacy, um, and it was a challenge. But and there were times when she would ask me. She would maybe see me looking at something on Instagram that was like a personal trainer or something, some guy with a six pack and whatnot, and she would ask me if I was gay. And she asked me that a couple of times over the years, based on just our lack of sex. And she started to notice that sometime, well, I think I can't really speak for her, but I would come home from work or school and she would be in lingerie, and I couldn't get hard. I would kind of freak out. There was one year for Valentine's Day, she told me she wanted something, not something cute and romantic. She's like, I want something practical. And at the time, she really wanted a electric can opener. So I bring home on Valentine's Day uh, electric can opener. When she gives me her gift, she had made a sex game on a bed sheet for our bed, and so she sees this can opener and she's like, Actually, that's not going to work. Anyway, it was funny. So stuff like that was funny.
I think it was showing how much she loved you
She
and
was.
how much she didn't want to
was.
lose you, but also suspected that you may be gay.
Yeah,
Because she asked you twice and you denied it.
Yeah.
But tell us how it ended.
Yeah. So there was one point where I had kind of, this was after 10 years of being married. I had gotten really good at erasing the search history. If I ever had a moment of weakness and looked at some pornography, I would erase the history on our phones, on the iPad, on the desktop, because they were all connected somehow. And so I'd have to erase it everywhere. And there was one time I had some stress happen and I looked at some porn and I erased it everywhere except for the iPad. And I remember thinking, oh, we never look at the iPad anyway. It sits in our drawer. And a couple months passed by, and I just kind of didn't really think about it again. And she called me at work one day and was like, "Hey, Cam, I found some stuff on the iPad. Do you want to tell me anything?" And I knew exactly what was on there. I knew she had found it, and I remember thinking, "Hey, I can wiggle my way out of this like I have for the last 10 years, or I can just accept that Cameron." Something has to change. And obviously, this isn't the part that's changing. Whatever you were told, it was wrong with the church and following all the rules. Like that didn't work.
Because you tried to follow them for years.
Mm-hmm.
Perfectly.
Yeah.
And it still wasn't changing who you are.
Yeah. So I said to her, "Hey, I'll talk to you once I get home." And it was such crazy timing because the next day I was scheduled to have this big grand opening block party for my practice. I had the whole community and the chambers of commerce coming over for a ribbon cutting. And the night before this, she finds this on the iPad, and I come home and she had taken the kids to their piano lessons from their grandma, and she comes home and I'm waiting for her in our bedroom, and she shuts the door, and for the first time in my whole life, I said the words, "I'm gay," and we both just start crying, and she comes and just gives me the biggest hug and holds me in her arms. And it was a really tender moment, different than I ever expected. And the feeling of weight that was off my shoulders from just saying it out loud was something I'll never forget. And her kindness. And at the time, we just thought, hey, like now we know what the problem is, and this is okay. Everyone deals with something. This is just our challenge in our marriage, but the church has the tools for us, and so we immediately just said, "Hey, let's go talk to the bishop. Let's go do all these things." And we were committed to staying together and staying in the church through all of this. And it didn't happen that way, but that's how it started. So
I think you mentioned you had a sense of peace, though, when you said that. When you, for the first time you admitted you're gay, you had a first sense of peace with yourself, I would think. You were at peace with yourself. Would that be a correct statement, Cam?
Yes, it would be.
Yeah.
And just beginning to get to know who I am.
Who you are, yeah.
I never let myself read anything about homosexuality. I never let myself read other stories of people's coming out process. And so it just kind of allowed me to finally, hey, you can talk about this now. Let's learn about it. And just as time went on and as we both learned about it, to put it simply, we started to realize that we didn't fit. And even though we wanted to, the church did not have the answers that we both needed. And we got to a point where I just realized I could not love her the way that she wants to be loved and deserves to be loved. And I knew that I knew she wasn't happy. I knew on the outside we looked like this picture perfect family. We were a beautiful couple. Our kids were beautiful. We were a beautiful family. But she deserved someone who could really love her intimately and physically and carnally. And I could never do that.
But you also deserve to have that too.
I did too.
Yes.
I did too. And there became one point where she had given me permission to go and basically have an affair with a man. Mm-hmm. And I said to her, no, I don't want to do that, because this isn't just a sexual thing. Mm-hmm. This isn't just me wanting to have sex with men. Mm-hmm. If that was the case, I would have done it years ago. Maybe, I don't know. But and so the fact that she was willing to be okay with that, I knew she deserved way better. And so it just, after the same argument over and over again about certain things, I just got to a point where I decided it's time. We need to let divorce be a healthy option. And let's do it now while we're young and while the kids are young, and let's not waste any more time. We were together during an important stage of life. We brought 3 beautiful kids into the world. So grateful for them, but let's live a life with more love. Mm-hmm. And so we decided on Mother's Day in 2019 to get divorced. And yeah, so it was a very special Mother's Day.
And yes, I understand what that's about, where things come out not necessarily when you think they're going to come out. Yeah. So yeah. I remembered in hearing this story again, how much Christian really loved you and wanted everything she could do to keep you, and as a good father and as a good husband in her life. She even went to the point where, I know this is painful to talk about, where she started hurting herself. Mm-hmm. And then that was when you began to realize that this is not what it's supposed to be. No. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah, and just out of respect for her, I really hope someday she will share with somebody publicly about where she was at, because it was dark. Mm-hmm. And our kids were hearing slam doors and screams and cries and sobs for months, and it was heartbreaking. And yes, there were times I'd have to kick down the door in the bathroom to make sure she was alive, and it became, I won't get into too many specifics, but it became too unsafe for her. Mm-hmm. And I couldn't live with the guilt of something happened to her. If she did something, I would never forgive myself.
Of course, I understand that.
And so, out of, as weird as it sounds, out of the love I had for her, I knew that I had to let her go, and she had to let go of me. And that was hard. But I remember, so when we first had the conversation about getting a divorce, she really wanted to say a prayer together. And so we knelt down on the ground in our living room and we said a prayer. And it was really sweet just to pray about something that most people, especially Mormons, they don't ask God for inspiration and revelation about a divorce. Divorce has such a negative, don't do it sort of reputation. And as we prayed about that, both of us felt so much peace. Later that evening, we went and saw our therapist, and she helped us navigate some things. But the next morning on Mother's Day, she woke up and was basically just, Cameron, I think you're right. I think a divorce is the healthiest option.
Mhm.
And we approached it from, at the time, it was such a logical, you have loved me every way you can, so have I, and it just isn't enough, and we deserve more.
I
And
think
so,
that what where both of you were letting go then. You just
mhm,
realized we're letting go of our marriage. And I think
yeah,
you both loved each other enough that you wanted to let each other go.
yeah,
That's really powerful. That's really courageous on your part. Tell us how you told the children.
yeah. So when we finally separated, we felt it would be best to give the kids a reason why. Why is Dad moving out? Why aren't we going to be married? And so for a while, we continued to go to church together during this whole process. And one Sunday after church, we sat them down on the couches, and she let me be the one to bring it up and to talk about it. And so yeah, we sat down, and I went to each of my kids, or I spoke to each of my kids individually. I said, Nash, you know how Heavenly Father gave you beautiful blue eyes, and Granger, he gave you this face full of cute freckles, and Tenley, you've got this laugh that is just so contagious, and your smile lights up the whole room. I was like, just like Heavenly Father gave each of you those things, Heavenly Father made your dad where he likes boys more than girls. And that's why your mom and dad aren't going to be married anymore, is because dad likes boys more than girls, and mom deserves to be married to a man that likes girls. And it was pretty simple. It was pretty short, and they had a couple of questions, but I mean, they were just like, okay. And as they've gotten older, it has been an honor to talk more openly and freely about the whole experience. And they're at a great place right now.
Now
They've
your
come up.
twins are 10 now, right?
They are 12 now, and then
Oh,
my
12
daughter.
now. And
Yep, yep. So at the time that they were 7, and my daughter was 5, and so
okay.
yep, our just turned 10. The boys are 12.
Now
So
I think that was so incredible the way you described such a loving way you talk to your children about coming out as liking men. I mean, I just have to say that was just the perfect way to do it.
it
And
was.
it had to be hard for you, but at the same time,
Mhm.
you used courage to be able to do that. And your
Yeah,
wife supported it.
she did,
Yeah.
and she didn't even feel like she had to add anything. She was like,
Yeah.
that's true.
Mm.
And in that time, shortly after, it was really amazing to see and hear my kids say, Dad, I'm really glad you and mom got divorced, because I really like having a happy mom and a happy dad.
Oh,
And it was
outstanding.
just amazing to hear, like, okay, they can see how much better both of us are doing now than when we were married. And so I'm grateful that they're observant enough to recognize that. So
I have to share this last part of the story because when couples break up, a man and a wife, because the man is gay, a lot of them have pain for the rest of their life, or at least the woman has it.
yeah,
And you were able to connect with your wife and her husband, and of course, Cam is now engaged to a gentleman. Is it Taviv?
uh, Havit.
Havit, okay.
Yeah,
And you got to tell us about this story because this is kind of the
yeah,
happy ending, and I love happy
it
endings.
is. And I mean, I will say, with her in these last 5 years, like, it has been a roller coaster with
Of
lots of
course.
highs, lots of lows, but we're at a really, really high point now.
Yeah.
But yeah, so I got engaged back in March. So we're at this point now where my fiance is a hairstylist, and my ex-wife will go to him for her hair, get her hair done. Her mom will go see him as well and get her hair done too. And it's I never imagined that would ever happen.
Oh,
And so my ex-wife, she got married pretty quickly after our divorce, and her new husband's got the three sons as well, and he cuts their hair. He and her husband's also divorced. His ex-wife comes to my fiance for her hair, and then she married someone that has kids and has some daughters, and he does their hair too. But we had an agreement when we got divorced that because we're such big Harry Potter nerds, that we would both be present when our kids went to Harry Potter World in Florida for the first time. And so our kids read all the books, and they earned enough where we could go. And so just back in March of this year, we planned a trip. And we went to Orlando, Florida together. We were at Universal Studios for 4 days. And it was me and my fiance. It was my ex-wife and her husband, his ex-wife and her husband, and all of our kids.
and you were all together.
We were all together. She made matching shirts for all of us.
Oh my
In
God.
the Harry Potter books, one of the characters, Mrs. Weasley, makes all of her kids sweaters for Christmas. And so Kristen made all of us a sweater with our initials on it. And we wore matching sweaters one day, and we took a big family picture. And it was really beautiful to just like, I think all of us went in there like expecting it to be really kind of awkward and weird, but we had the time of our life. We were laughing and joking, waiting in lines and walking all over the parks. And my ex-wife has a baby who's almost a year and a half or something, and she would let my fiance and I hold her while they'd go on rides, and
Oh,
it was just so fun.
yeah.
And since that time, we'll meet together now, and we'll have like a family dinner and whatnot. And so I'm hoping it stays this way for a while, or for the rest of our co-parenting lives, because it's been pretty awesome.
And what a fabulous example for your children to be able
Yeah,
to see their mom and dad love them. Even though they're not together, they love each other, and you still
yeah,
love you. I always said with my ex-wife, my second ex-wife, I had two wives, that I will always love her, but
yeah.
I'm just not in love with her.
Right, right.
So
And
are you, Cam, are you at a sense of peace with your life right now?
I am.
Are
I
you at
am.
peace with yourself?
I am at so much peace, and I did not know this level of peace was possible. And I haven't read my scriptures. I haven't said a prayer in years, but
Mm-hmm.
at least the Mormon kind. But yes, it feels so good to just accept who I am, um, and
So the
love.
biggest gift you gave was really yourself, of accepting who you were.
Yeah,
And as a beautiful gay man with a beautiful family. And that's powerful. I know what that's like. I went through a similar journey myself. One of the
mhm.
things I always ask my podcast guests, you have an incredible story of courage.
Thank you.
I always say I get more out of doing these podcasts because every story I do is so encouraging and powerful for me, and it makes me reflect on the importance of life and being your authentic self. But we're going to have listeners from all over the world listening to this. What would you like them and your story of people who are struggling with who they are or hiding who they are? What would you like your story to tell them? Could you share some last words with us on that, Cam?
Yeah, I think for me, I had got to a point where I thought I had to maintain this mask, that I had created over decades of my life. Um, and the thought of taking that off not only felt impossible, but I think a lot of people in that situation with stories like ours, they might see other options being easier, such as suicide or something. And I think for me, what I learned is that the difficulty of taking off that mask was not as hard as I had thought it was. And that as I took it off piece by piece, layer by layer, over years of work with therapists and meditation and journaling, the self-acceptance and the letting go of shame and the fear that had held me back, I never knew it could be so different than what it was before, and that it could be so good. And so I guess for anyone out there in a similar spot, just know that the work is worth it, and it's possible. And there's an entire community of people who have done it, and you aren't alone. And that has brought a lot of peace too.
Mm-hmm. Wow, that's a powerful comment. It's been such a pleasure, Cam, having you on my podcast. You showed a lot of courage. Sometimes, as I mentioned to you earlier, sometimes when we run from fear, we usually end up addicting on something. But when you embrace your fear, as you did, even though it took you years to do, and of course, in my case, it took me many, many years to use courage, our stories are similar, and we have a sense of peace and acceptance. And I think when you have that peace and acceptance of yourself, you're more willing to give that peace and acceptance to other people because it's authentic. It's authentic. Your story's been powerful, Cam. Thank you so much for being on my podcast today. I'm looking forward to meet you and your fiance again soon.
Yes.
Thank you for doing the podcast, me. It was terrific. And I want to thank you for all your courage and overcoming the fear that you did to be your authentic self. Thank you, Cam. You take care now.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.